Good evening. It is November 9th, 2021. Welcome to the San Marino Unified School District Board of Education meeting. Here is your board president, Shelley Ryan.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. There is nothing to report from closed session. I now begin to open our regular open session. It is now 7:15. Call to order. We're going to do roll call of board members first. All right. Mr. Kalaki?
It's roll call.
Oh,
It's roll call.
here.
Okay. Mr. Chang?
Here.
Mrs. Jack? Here. Mrs. Chang?
Aye, up here.
Mrs. Ryan, aye, and student board member?
Aye.
All right, next, the Pledge of Allegiance, the flag salute. Tonight will be led by Isaac Lee and Alexander Levy. These are students from the Student Council. They're vice presidents from Carver Elementary.
Good evening, Superintendent Delatorre, distinguished board members, and all those in attendance. My name is Isaac Lee, and I'm a fifth grade pioneer at Carver Elementary. I'm joined here by my family. In the audience are my dad, my mom, and my brother Terrence, who's also a student at Carver, in Miss Song Lee and Miss Chu's second grade class. I'm here tonight because I was the Student Council Vice President under the leadership of Ms. Travisano.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Levy, and I'm joined by my brother and my parents. I'm here because I'm a Student Council 2021 board member. We learn a lot of new skills in Carver. For example, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And if you want to get more complicated, fractions, decimals, and percents. We have many fun events and traditions we do at Carver. My favorite is probably the Halloween parade. Everyone came to school in their costumes and were able to experience class parties, contests, and crafts. My favorite subject in school is social studies. I love to learn about history. I enjoy playing Foursquare at recess with my friends. Last week, we enjoyed our school-wide jogathon, where we ran laps, collected bracelets, and raised funds for Carver activities. One of my favorite hobbies is reading during my free time. I love to read books of different genres. My favorite genre is fantasy.
I'm ecstatic to be back at school in person learning. In Ms. Donahoe's class, we've been studying a wide variety of subjects, my favorite being space. Ms. Donahoe has also been teaching us about teamwork and communicating effectively through our class challenges where we work in groups to accomplish a goal within a set time limit. One of my favorite things about being back at school is being part of Miss Megan Lee's Math Olympiad team, where I really enjoy doing math. Have you ever heard a student say that before? Finally, at Carver, we have a culture of wanting to help the environment. Every week on Friday, more than 50% of the student body walks together to Carver during the walking school bus under the leadership of Miss Suzuki and Miss Johansson's family. This conserves energy and gives students and parents a good workout. Not to mention, it gives us pioneers an opportunity to talk to our friends. I love being at Carver because it is a place that teaches me life skills, community, responsibility, and above all, integrity. As you can see from all the teachers I've spoken about, they work tirelessly to set me and my fellow pioneers up for life beyond the Carver walls, and for that, we owe you all a debt of gratitude.
Today, as we welcome you to the award-winning San Marino Unified School District Board meeting, Isaac and I would like to pay our respects to our country and our flag. Please join us as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand quietly and respectfully. Face the flag. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. We're honored to be here tonight representing Carver Elementary. Thank you, Dr. Lynn, for this wonderful opportunity.
Oh my gosh. I did. Oh, you didn't sign that one? Do you want to announce it? Yes. Okay. Alexander and Isaac would like to present you. That's possible. And your parents can come up as well and be in the photograph. It's for Isaac, me. This one is for Alexander. You gentlemen did an outstanding job. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us and for leading us in the class. The parents. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
That was really sweet. We have some future student board members here.
yeah. So we're looking at future student board members and part of speech and debate.
Excuse me, I think future president. Absolutely.
I'll get the gavel ready. All right. Next, we have approval of the agenda. This is an action item.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Jack. Thank you, Mr. Chang. With that roll call, Mrs. Jack,
Aye.
Mrs. Chang,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mr. Kalaki,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, I, and student board member. Motion passes, the approval of the agenda. Next, we have approval of minutes. This is also an action item.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Chang. Thank you, Mr. Chang. Roll call vote, Mr. Kalaki,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Jack,
Aye.
Mrs. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, I, student board member. Thank you. The motion passes for the approval of minutes. Next, we have public comments. The Board of Education has adopted Board Policy 9323B to ensure the public's right to be heard in any matters pertaining to the San Marino Unified School District. Persons who wish to provide public comments will have three options to submit public comments. Prior to the meeting, submitted through an online form. We had received two prior to 3:30 this afternoon. During the meeting, raise hand during the public comment periods, or in person, you may submit a public comment card. Items not on the agenda, oral comments only.
Thank you, President Ryan. We are pausing for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding matters that are not on the agenda. If you would like to make a request, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. We have 30 seconds remaining. If you would like to make a request to speak regarding matters that are not on the agenda, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. Okay, President Ryan, we have no requests.
Thank you. Next, items on the consent section.
Again, we are pausing for a minute to take requests to speak regarding matters in the consent section. If you would like to make a request, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. $30 remain. If you'd like to make a request, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. Okay, President Ryan, we have no requests.
Thank you. All right, we move to 8, which is consent section. That's 8A to G.
I make a motion to approve the matters on the consent agenda, 8A through 8G.
I second.
Thank you, Mrs. Jack. Thank you, Mrs. Oh, go ahead.
I just have a question regarding 8F and 8G.
Mhm.
With regard to those trips, I asked for clarification of what the contingency plan would be if COVID numbers were to increase, particularly since we're dealing with travel either across the state or into another country. Is there a threshold that if COVID numbers get to a certain point in either of these geographic regions that plans will change?
Yes, plans will change if it is unsafe for students to travel outside of the country. I know that the high school is actively monitoring international travel for the Paris trip that is planned. So we will not put children in harm's way. If it is not safe, they simply will not go and we'll have to reschedule the trip to an alternative date.
Is there a specific threshold that's been determined as far as what defines unsafe?
My understanding is that they have levels. Dr. Troy knows more about that, and I will turn it over to him to speak to that.
Yes, there are currently 4 travel advisory levels, and for the country of France, they're currently in level 3, which is reconsider travel. I would say at this point, levels 3 and 4 would be areas that we would definitely caution about traveling. In fact, level 4 specifically says do not travel. And we would hope that by the time this field trip comes around, it would be at levels 2 or lower. So level 2 would be exercise increased caution, and then level 1 is exercise normal precautions.
And if it continues to be at level 3, where there's an advisory to reconsider travel, is the plan to still send that trip?
Well, here comes our high school principal, who I know can speak to that issue. Conveniently, thank you.
What's the direct question? I was outside.
Yes.
The question I was asking is currently, as I understand from Dr. Choi, the region for the Paris trip is currently under is it at the federal level, Dr. Choi, the level 3 reconsider travel is from a federal.
It is
advisory.
from the U.S. Department of State.
Okay, so the U.S. State Department says that they would advise reconsidering travel to that region. If that region continues to be at level 3, advising reconsidering travel to that region at the time of the trip, is the plan to continue with that trip, or would it in fact be reconsidered?
Was that a recent change? Because I believe we're lower than France right now. In terms of countries to travel to. I don't know what we were at when we started the plans. I just know that we were at orange and they were at green when we made the trip plan. Maybe that has shifted. We'd have to talk to our travel advisor who's setting up the trip with us with this company. But she would be the one to advise us as to whether or not we would. And then I would assume it would be the parents' decision about whether or not they want to proceed or not.
And is that only at the level 3 reconsideration stage, or if it then were to advance up to a level 4, which is State Department advises do not travel? Is that, Dr. Choi, is that what the language is roughly from the State Department if it were to go to a level 4?
Correct. If it's level 4, simply do not travel.
Okay, so if it were to reach that level,
And it doesn't sound like it would even be an option to.
Right.
Is that correct?
I'm not clear actually on the actual policies from France. However, if we were to follow our government's Department of State, we would follow, you know, if it's level 4, we would not recommend, I would not
No.
recommend travel.
We would not recommend traveling at
Oh.
all if it's level 4. Is this trip is taking place over spring break?
Yeah. I
Or
believe
during
it starts
school.
The Thursday before spring break, and it brings students back Thursday. of spring.
Okay, and students who are on this trip, are they receiving any kind of academic credit for the trip? Or is it simply a voluntary trip?
It's a voluntary co-curricular trip.
Okay,
Out of 42, I believe 39 have already expressed an intent to attend.
okay,
And 17 chaperones, all of which are parents of the students who are going, except for Mr. Jameson and his accompanist.
right. So we'll comply with state and federal guidelines on traveling out of country. We expect that things will change in the spring. And we're always checking with our JPA on liability issues, but I know from prior conversations with our council that as long as it's a trip that is taking place outside of the school calendar, it is voluntary, not mandatory. We're not giving them academic credit for attending. Then the parents are signing a hold harmless agreement and allowing their kids to go on a voluntary trip. So it's outside of our required education.
right? And because I mean, I'm very hopeful that this trip can happen. I think that I definitely see the tremendous benefit to each of the students in participating in this, and I'm very hopeful that it can happen.
Mhm.
My concern would be that we would have a group of students that may be in France, and because there's some level or
Mhm.
that they might also potentially not be able to come back in time for school to begin regularly. And so I just want to know if there is some specifics as far as plans, and it sounds like there is specific plans to reconsider or potentially not do the trip if it's at a certain level. It sounds like definitely if it's at a level 4,
Right.
according to the State Department. But with a level 3, the plan is that it would be left up to the parents, or would the district still then make its own reconsideration?
I think we would have to really understand what a
Yeah.
level 3 means,
Right.
what it means in terms of travel, going in, going out, what the expectations are with France, what the expectations are from our State Department and our embassies. The person who set up the trip with us actually has worked their last, I think, 5 years for the US Embassy in France. And their offices are located either right next door or across the street from that. So they work very closely with them to move those students. We have not our own hotel exclusive, but very exclusive sections of the hotel. We are in one hotel. We're not moving to multiples. When we are performing in venues, they're doing it as their own group. It's not as though they're bringing a bunch of other people into those venues. And we're very restricted on our interior travel once we're there in terms of intermixing with others. Like we're going in a group and we're staying just in that group. Yeah, it's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. Obviously, nobody knows how to do this. Nobody's, our job is to get you this information very early so that you can approve it. Then we can watch it and we can make determinations based on all of these massive changes. Tomorrow, they could shift to a green and then we're very excited. And then a week later, it could go back to where it is now. So we just have to keep our eye on it and we have to keep making the best decisions and communicating with that tour group who's been very helpful and is willing to come and speak with you all at any time if you'd like to speak with her. She's local. She just couldn't be here this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Camera.
So we have a motion on the floor. We'll do,
Could I just
Okay.
ask, I'm sorry,
Oh.
can I just ask one thing, make a request, and if it's fulfilled, it's fulfilled. If not, so be it. But could we potentially have an update on the, at the board meeting immediately preceding this trip, so we can all understand what the current status is as far as State Department recommendations at that time? Or maybe there's another way. I just want to make sure that before we send students off to another country, we're all on board with knowing exactly what the current status is at that point.
Are you saying, though, that with that sort of update, you would not make a decision now?
No, it's on the agenda. There's a motion standing. It would be voted on.
But the
What I'm saying is I would like to have a factual update provided to the board before we send 17 students out of the country, that we at least know what the current recommendations are as from the State Department and what the current levels are at that point. Just a factual explanation.
So just for informational purposes.
For informational purposes, and if need be, either it would be a decision made by the administration, or if the board felt that it needed to make a reconsideration at that time.
go ahead, Mr. Chang.
I think for this issue concern, I think because we have school district have a COVID-19 compliance officer. So this is not just for this 2 trip. Yeah. So every week we need to continue to update for the school employee and the parent and the board member. So I believe the Dr. Choice will continue to provide the update, right? Absolutely.
And we can always update the board in the weekly board memo, where we provide you with a lot of information related to administrative decisions.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. So Mrs. Jack has a motion on the floor.
There was a second. Here's a second
Okay.
for me.
Mrs. Chong, second. Thank you so much. And so with that, roll call, Mr. Kalaki,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
I
Chong,
Aye.
Mrs. Jack,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. And so with consent section A to G, student board member? Aye. Thank you. The motion has passed. Next is the communication section in 9A, communication from the Board of Education. I'd like to start, if I may. As board president and on behalf of the entire board, we would like to take this opportunity to recognize and appreciate our wonderful teachers, administrators, and support staff for all the work they have and continue to do. These last 21 months have been difficult. It turned everything we were accustomed to doing upside down and removed the calm of a daily routine at our schools and the reassurance associated with that. Yet we persevered because of the efforts of everyone in this district coming together, understanding that the needs of the students are paramount. The board is incredibly appreciative and grateful for the many positive ways in which our teachers, administrators, and support staff responded to this unprecedented challenge. Through creativity, tenacity, hard work, and sensitivity to ensure the best educational environment for our students. We would also like to express our gratitude to our community, our amazing students and families who face this situation with patience and flexibility. To our community who supported the renewal of Measure E, fundraising, donations of PPE-related equipment. Thank you for being there as you always have been. These last 21 months have challenged us, but also provided us with new opportunities to see possibilities in everything that we do every single day. We will all get through this together, teachers, administrators, and support staff. Rising to the challenge, united in our understanding that the goal always is to ensure our exemplary students receive the outstanding education they deserve. Thank you. So next, communication from the board, Mr. Clackey.
I'd like to thank President Ryan for saying those words about our teachers and our staff members. The teams that we have that are educating our children are invaluable, and they are greatly and deeply appreciated by the students and by parents and the board, as President Ryan states, as well as particularly as well by myself. So for that, thank you to each of you for everything you do for our students every day. I have received numerous communications in the last 2 weeks since our last board meeting from parents and community members that have echoed that sentiment and wanted to make sure that it was very clear that they support our teachers in everything that they do. And so I want to thank our community members for reaching out to the board and letting the board know what their thoughts are and their support for our teachers.
Mr. Chang.
Once again, I want to echo our board president. Yeah, definitely, we appreciate all the teacher and the staff. As you know, the last 18 months was a very critical time. As the previous the board president, I think last 18 months, we think most important is for the safety issue. So we are able to achieve for that goal. And gradually, everyone already got the vaccine. And this coming Friday, Dr. Stephen Choi will coordinate another vaccination for the age 5 to 12. So with that, then I think this school district is even more safe. So with that, I think it's a big the time, yeah, everyone work together and focus on the learning, teaching. So because the student always the priority, and we appreciate the teacher and the staff, the support. And also we appreciate district administrator for their coordination for last 18 months, work so hard to make sure we have a very the minor the incident on the COVID-19. I think this should be proud among all the Southern California school district. And next, my biweekly report, October 29, I coordinate one Zoom meeting for our new superintendent, Dr. Linda Territory, and also Executive Director Dina Richter, and our board president. So we asked the CSC Health, the mental health department, because right now the mental health became the very high priority. So besides the COVID-19 issue, we want to make sure, you know, in our school district, the mental issue, we also can minimize. So I think this a introduction, the meeting, I think this coming Friday, Dr. Territory will have a site visit with the mental health clinic. And the next November 3rd,
No, that's the October 29th. That's for the Valentine Halloween parade. So when you see all the kids on the outside, and we are so excited, you know, they look like the normal life become the real. So I see every kid they have a smiling. That's good. And then November 3rd, yeah, we have a CSC Health Zoom meeting with district staff. Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Chang.
Sure, I'll start with my report. I also watched the elementary parades and enjoyed watching that. Thank you. I want to send a little shout out to Dr. Lin because he's been like GoProing everything. And it's been really fun. He sent like a video from every day that started with rain and ended with the parade that week, which was really fun to see all the kids on campus since we can't be there in person as parents. I also participated in the San Marino High School mock interviews on the 29th. And as always, I was just blown away by the amazing students that we produce, not because of necessarily what we do, but because they prioritize their own education. And so I wanted to thank the administration at the high school for putting that together to help prepare our students for those college interviews. On the 6th, I attended the San Marino High School Parent Party. Again, fantastic collaboration between parents, teachers, and students with artwork on display as the centerpieces and some very amusing renditions of Mr. Kurtenbach and Mr. Barton and student artwork and whatnot. And that was done in collaboration between the parents and teachers, which was just so great to see after a year of being in a pandemic. And then in addition, city talk and PTA meetings, principal coffees as usual. I also wanted to commend the San Marino High School and the staff for the police activity and how that was handled on behalf of our students and our staff. There was communication put out in a timely manner, and the students all did what they were supposed to, and it could have been scarier and it could have been worse, but that was just a tremendous effort on behalf of everybody to do what they were supposed to do because they were well prepared and trained. So I wanted to say thank you and commend everybody on that. In addition, I also received a number of communications from over a dozen parents regarding their letter of support for our teachers. And I want to express my appreciation for the communication because those parents really are critical in supporting the teachers, as it is only because of all of the efforts that everybody in this community that we can even deliberate our financial future. And on that note, it's been personally for me a year since I was elected, and just looking at everything that has been done in the middle of the pandemic, it's been pretty tremendous. And so I'm going to take a moment to sort of take you on a little bit of a side trail. There's a guy who does TED Talks named Simon Sinek, and he talks about finite and infinite games. And it got me out thinking a lot about the kind of games that people play. Back in the 70s, 60s, people played arcade games. You dropped a quarter in your video box and in the arcade machine, and you got one game. And it was either game over or high score. That was really the only way the game ended. And the objective was to get you to put another quarter in that machine. It was a finite game. It had an end point. The whole point of the game was to end. And yet, when we look at the games that kids play today, it transitioned into these Xbox. It transitioned into computer games. You're playing not only now with the one player in another box or even another multiplayer game on a network, but you're playing an infinite number of players across an infinite galaxy, whether it be Minecraft, Roblox, or whatever. And all the kids know what I'm talking about. The adults are like, what are you talking about? But it's this idea that you're playing an infinite game. And what's interesting about it is I don't even think people realize that Minecraft actually has an end goal. There's actually an objective to Minecraft, but nobody actually plays Minecraft for the end goal. They play Minecraft so they can stay in the game and they can build and create. And it is an infinite game full of infinite players. That is what my goals are as a member of this board for the past year. And what I look to in the future is I'm not playing a finite game. I'm not playing to win. I'm not playing to lose. I am playing for the future of this district on an infinite level. And I hope that all of us can really look with that perspective in mind as we consider to plan for the future in the long term.
Mrs. Jack?
I would like to start off with, I also participated in the mock interviews, and I was lucky enough to be able to interview students. But at the end of the day, they wanted our feedback, and my feedback is they didn't need to practice because really they were amazing. And so I think they taught me a lot, and their ability to articulate, to express themselves. I would, if I were, any of the colleges that they wanted to be accepted to, I would accept them in a nanosecond. Then I also received a number of phone calls from parents and community members. And I would like to also express my appreciation for that input. I think each and every one of us are here to listen. And when people are engaged, I think it is the best for the district. I would like to finally echo and echo President Ryan's sentiments, and thank you for expressing it on behalf of the board. I think, our duty as a board, our obligation, our responsibility is to provide the most outstanding, the most excellent education possible under all of the circumstances that we review, because that is why we were either elected or appointed. The only way we can do it is if we do it together. And that together means all of us. That means our administrators, it means our support staff, it means our beloved teachers, it means parents, and it means all of our community partners. As President Ryan noted, it has been a difficult time for all of us, but we have come out better on the other side. We are stronger and still successful. So I am hoping that everyone understands that it is our pledge to make this district the best that it can be for the best students in the state of California. And again, I would just like to echo that sentiment. We can only do it united as one entity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Jack. Superintendent Delatorre.
Thank you, President Ryan. I'd just like to announce that San Marino High School is having a showcase tomorrow evening from 6 to 8 p.m. It is going to be a very fun event wherein parents and students and prospective parents and students will get to see all of the wonderful programs that we have. We're going to have some food trucks and some entertainment. So I would encourage you all to be there, show up, invite your friends, especially if they're in private schools. We want to lure them back to our fabulous San Marino High School, which we know does an outstanding job of educating each and every one of our students. In addition to that, I'd just like to offer my sincerest congratulations on behalf of the district to Principal Topalian, to Mr. Miller, and to all of the faculty and classified staff at Huntington Middle School, who is just returning from Washington, wherein Principal Topalian received the very prestigious, distinguished National Blue Ribbon Award. And we are very fortunate that he is going to be sharing that presentation with us this evening. So we'll have another opportunity to congratulate him and to honor the work that the entire faculty and staff has done at Huntington Middle School. So we're so proud of them. I also attended the San Marino High School parent party on Saturday. They had about 200 people there. It was a lovely evening. It was very well planned. This was the first time that we had teachers involved in the planning of the party and the execution of the party. So a big shout out to Teresa Murphy, to Jose Cayer, and of course, the lovely Beth Davis for providing her support, experience, and assistance in making that party happen. They were able to meet their goal, and of course, all the proceeds go back to the school. Also, I wanted just to say thank you to Dr. Richter. A week and a half ago, she was told that there is an educator effectiveness grant opportunity for the school district, but she had to have that approved by the board and submitted to the county by the end of this week. And so she had very little time to do that, but she rolled up her sleeves and got it done. She's going to be presenting on that this evening. which is a wonderful opportunity to invest in all of our teachers' professional development going forward. Dr. Richter, President Ryan, and I, as Mr. Chang mentioned, had a lovely conversation with the Chinese Service Center, and we intend to continue a very strong partnership with them. They are providing wonderful supports and services to our students in San Marino schools, and we are going to go out there Friday afternoon and have a site visit with them. So I look forward to strengthening that relationship as we move forward. I would like to thank Mr. Chang for the introduction and the connection. We really appreciate that. And then finally, Dr. Choi, Mrs. Choi and I look forward to attending the Mid-Autumn Festival this Saturday. We're looking forward to that event. That's going to be a lot of fun. And I would like to congratulate Mrs. Letty Aranda on becoming a grandparent for the first time. So she has a grandson, very handsome little baby boy, happy, healthy. And so I'm sure she is going to really enjoy her time as a grandmother. It's just the best ever. I highly recommend it. And that's all for me.
Thank you, Dr. Delatorre. Now communication from the student board member.
No updates, except can I quickly promote the SMHS Dance Department Lights Out on Friday and Saturday, November 12th and the 13th at 7 p.m. in the Nair Theater.
Thank you.
I have one more.
Okay,
One more real
yes.
quick. Okay. And also I wanted to let everybody know that School Shine is coming out to do a promotional video on the San Marino High School campus tomorrow. And so if you see a film crew wandering about, that's what they're doing. And it's going to be fabulous once it's done and posted to the San Marino High School's website. And it will really give people who are shopping for a new high school a great look at all the wonderful things that are happening at San Marino High.
Thank you. All right. Next, Dr. Choi, public comments. This is an information item. Communications from the audience regarding matters on the information agenda will be made at this time.
Okay, thank you, President Ryan. We are pausing for a minute to take requests to speak regarding matters in the information section of the agenda. If you'd like to make a request to speak, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. 30 seconds remaining if you'd like to make a request to speak regarding matters in the information section of the agenda. If you'd like to make a request, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. Okay, President Ryan, we have no requests.
Thank you. All right, next information items. 11A is the National Merit Scholarship finalists. I'd like to call up Vice Principal Kassam Clay.
Hello, good evening, members of the board and district administration. It's my distinct pleasure to present to you the 15 National Merit semifinalists from San Marino High School this year. Not quite semifinalists, they will be finalists, I'm sure of it soon. These students earned exceptional scores in the PSAT National Merit Qualifying Exam during their junior year. Nationwide, 16,000 seniors were selected to be semifinalists out of hundreds of thousands that took the exam last school year. These SMHS seniors are truly a select group of exceptional students. Of the 16,000 semifinalists, 2,500 will be named National Merit Scholars in February, and another 5,000 students will be eligible for scholarships through the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. On top of college applications and the stress of senior year, these 15 students submitted a detailed application to become a National Merit finalist in September. Our counselors also took the time to meet with each student and write individual recommendations specific to this award competition. Having screened each application before submission, I can attest to how remarkable these students are. I'm pleased to name the SMHS National Merit Semifinalists for the 21-22 school year. And a lot of them are busy with applications and so on, but we have a good crowd here tonight. When I call your name, if you wouldn't mind standing, please. Chelsea On, Randy Kai, Lin, Sophia Yao and Victor Yao couldn't make it tonight. Marcus Chua, Lucas Chen, Arlene Kettelar, Anya Chang, Yishang Zhang, Sun, Amber Tang, Prince Camden Wu. Congratulations, National Merit semifinalists. Congratulations.
Can we get a picture of all of you in the front?
Two, three, smile. Oh, wait, we're all wearing masks. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Huge accomplishment.
15. That's awesome. No, I'm sorry. No, I'm fine. I'm sorry. Probably encroaching on your space. Yeah, just spread out. They weren't here for us. Where are those people?
You know how to clear a room.
Right? There goes our crowd.
I know.
We sending that into Mitch?
Yeah, okay, we'll send him over, Tim. Yeah. Yay, Huntington.
Wow. All right, next, not to be outdone, but HMS National Blue Ribbon Award Ceremony. Coming up to the podium is Principal Daryl Topolian.
Good evening, Board President Shelley Ryan, board members, student board member, and district administration. Tonight, we celebrate the extraordinary success of HMS staff, the teachers, and our students. I would like to present to you the 2021 National Blue Ribbon Award-winning school for being an exemplary, high-performing school, Henry E. Huntington Middle School. For the people at home, you got to appreciate it. Vince Lombardi once said, "The achievements of an organization is the result of the combined effort of each individual." Now, I'd like to take a moment to recognize my HMS leadership team and staff. These are the individuals who have helped complete the lengthy National Blue Ribbon School application. Several members of the team are here tonight, as well as staff members from HMS. So thank you for being with us. But I'd like to recognize first my assistant principal, Miss Mary Hazlett. And now for several of the writers that helped complete the application, department chair and leads. One of our lead writers is our English department chair, Mr. Rob Miller. Department chair, Diana Hang. Studies chair, Mr. Chris Good. With us tonight, our department chair from science, Suzanne Nita. Visual Performing Arts Chair, Michelle Macedo. Special Education Department Chair, Penny Roberts. Foreign Language Department Chair, Cecilia Salgado. Great lead in here tonight, Sheila Doan. School Counselor, June Gonzalez. Our activities director, athletic director, like another assistant principal, kind of my boss indirectly, Kelly Keto. Also with us tonight is 6th grade math and science teacher, Sung Oh. Also with us tonight is 7th and 8th grade science teacher and also science Olympiad coach, along with Suzanne Nita, Miss Cynthia Wong. I'd like to take a moment to especially recognize and acknowledge Mr. Rob Miller for his creative and direct tact in taking all of our work as departments and my writing as site principal, all the sections, and making them one voice in the application. Several hours were spent with him and I, but mostly him, editing and writing. So thank you to Mr. Rob Miller. Knowing the meaning of this achievement and experiencing a sense of accomplishment during the most craziest and challenging of times, this HMS staff is to be commended. It's nothing I have done. It's the work of these amazing people that they've done over a course of time. Not just 1 year, not just 2 years, not just 3 years. To be a National Blue Ribbon School, they observe you for over 5 years. This includes the individual efforts, as Vince Lombardi said, of each teacher and their respective departments. These teachers pivoted, they adjusted, they reconstructed their curriculum, their teaching styles, and to maximize student learning. This includes the individual efforts of the instructional aides who work with the students one-on-one in small groups to support our teachers and student learning. This includes the individual efforts of the coaches, advisors, teachers who supervise school teams, clubs, hangouts, and the organizations on the HMS campus. This includes the individual efforts of our custodial crew, our cafeteria staff, our maintenance crew that keep our campus clean and our students filled with nutrition. This includes the individual efforts of our PTA for their service and their volunteerism to our teachers and to our kids. This includes the individual efforts of our support and vital relationship with the San Marino Schools Foundation. And also, this also includes the individual efforts and supportive services provided from the Partnership of Awareness. I also believe if Vince Lombardi was here today, he would also recognize the efforts of Carver Elementary and Valentine Elementary for those staff who set a firm foundation for those incoming students. So I publicly want to thank the teachers and the leadership at Carver and Valentine Elementary School. Thank you to Dr. Lynn, Ms. Foray, to you and your staff. As a reminder, in 2019, Dr. Lynn and the Carver staff were awarded a National Blue Ribbon. You see, Henry E. Huntington Middle School is committed to their motto, where every student is valued and an active learner. HMS is leading the way in academic excellence, assisting students in discovering healthy mindsets and developing students of character. As educators, we're still learning. We at MHS are learning how to know each child's face with a mask, know their name and their story. We're learning to understand the art of applying the heart of the curriculum to each face, name, and that story. We at MHS are learning to prepare students for jobs not yet created, to a world that is becoming unknown to us and to them. We are learning at HMS to strengthen the pathways from our elementary schools to HMS and to bridge the way to San Marino High School. We at HMS are learning to heal and grow together as a district so we can multiply on our successes. This is a culmination of the great work at Carver, at Valentine, at Huntington Middle School, and at San Marino High School. Our resources in San Marino are unmatched by the surrounding districts, yet we shine. Nothing political about it at HMS. Our students and staff, we are champions. So you see, as principal, I'm not in charge. They're in charge. I'm just responsible for those who are. These are the wonderful, amazing teachers and staff and students of Henry E. Huntington Middle School. So congratulations, HMS, teachers and staff and students, for your recognition as a not one, but two-time National Blue Ribbon School. So I prepared a little slideshow with some pictures because I was given a directive by our superintendent to take pictures. I will say this, I'm not great at taking pictures. And I told Mr. Miller, who went with me back to DC, I got to take pictures to prove that we were here. So, congratulations, there we are. Just wanting you to know how it works for the National Blue Ribbon, to break it down for you, to help you better understand what this looks like. So there's two areas that you can be awarded a National Blue Ribbon. Number one is an exemplary high-performing school. And the second is an exemplary achievement gap, that you closed a gap. So we are in our 2021 National Blue Ribbon School for high-performing, exemplary high-performing school. So the overall academic performance exceeds standards or well above expectations in those two areas. And then HMS and all the award-winning schools are a model for schools still striving for academic excellence. And I got to meet with some people who actually want to visit us, knowing who we are. And so that's exciting. And here's why it's exciting. Look at this. Look at the statistics. 325 schools in the US received a National Blue Ribbon School. There's more than 132,000 elementary and secondary schools in the United States. 300 of those are public that got recognized at this. 1% are pre-K that were there, 69% elementary. Look at the statistic for Huntington Middle School. 15% of those 302 public schools, 15% of those schools is Henry E. Huntington Middle School. 23 are private. We don't talk about them. We love them, but they're not our friend right now. 45 middle schools were recognized in the nation. Only one in the state of California. That's HMS. That's something to be applauded for the teachers and staff at Huntington. Yes. I challenged the data here by US News and World Report, but they have us ranked as number 40 as the best middle school in the state of California. But it's something to be said. And then approximately 1,325 middle schools in California. It's pretty great. And it's not including K. And to think about it, think about middle school. Think about the age group, think about the development of these young minds, the challenges that they're going through, and to exceed the expectations that we're doing is to be commended. And so pretty powerful. Oh, those are just pictures too, by the way. That's like my creativity right there, using my folder with my SMUSD mask and my HMS mask. Anybody know? I think Ms. Seda would have been proud. Thank you. Thank you. For the viewers at home, it's quite a picture. In the back is Abakumi, and she led the conference, kind of like facilitated, and she did a great job, and she's part of the Office of Education. So pretty special. So day one, just so you know, we did attend activities. So there's networking and topic discussions. You can list some of the things that I just put there that I was able to talk about. Bridging learning and opportunity gaps, family engagement, health and wellness. That was a big one while we were there. The social emotional growth and learning. Summer learning enrichment. That has a lot to do with the success of high performing schools. So thank you to our San Marino Schools Foundation. Thank you to Partnership for Awareness. All the things that we do, trauma informed practices. Again, Partnership for Awareness. So much of our school community is involved in the success that happens on our campuses daily, not just for Valentine, not just for Carver, not just for Huntington, but also San Marino High School. These all play a key to vital role. The speakers in sessions, U.S. Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona was there. Also, some of these topics were designed high quality education learners. Director of MBRS, Abi Kumi, I showed you in the picture above. I wanted to take a selfie with her. If you watched the live thing, I asked her if I can take a picture with her. She turned me down, so I was a little disappointed by that. Still love her anyway, so it was great. The Deputy Secretary of Education, Cynthia Martin, she's out of San Diego, and she spoke, and it was very moving and very powerful. And then what was great is who led and introduced Cynthia Martin was a 7th grade student out of Howard University, Washington Middle School, and he did a great job. And I just thought for a 7th grader to have him up there and us being in middle school was pretty powerful. And then our superintendent of instruction, Tony Thurmond, spoke to us. So there's Rob and I receiving the award. There's Tony speaking. And then there's me with the gentleman, Adam Honeysett out of the U.S. Department of Education, just bumping shoulders with the big people. And so that was Friday. Rob and I got in our award, and then we said good night. So there's good night from Washington, D.C. So thank you all again. So Huntington Middle School.
Daryl, that's where you stayed? That's what we paid for?
Actually, Rob and I are outdoors guys. See the tree on the right and the water fountain? That's kind of where we were. So I have this beautiful plaque that will hang at Huntington Middle School. And they will be giving us a flag that only very few schools get, that we will have, and we will be hanging that from our flagpole. So I'd like the staff to come up as well.
Can we do 2? We're gonna do one with just the entire board and you and everybody. The sound. Okay?
I do. I need to go back.
I haven't been in middle school in like 4 years. I know, but every time, board includes you.
If I can just add one more thing, I failed to mention one of my department chairs who part of my leadership team. That's my physical education director, Mr. Luis Rivera. So
Oh, yeah.
thank you, Mr. Rivera, for listening.
Thank you, Daryl. All right. I don't know how you follow that, but redistricting from LA County Office of Education. Dr. Delatorre will introduce Dr. Allison Deegan from LA
And
COE. Laco.
Dr. Troy, do you have her queued up?
She is. She's coming on, joining.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present Dr. Allison Deegan from the Los Angeles County Office of Education to discuss this evening the process of redistricting and creating trustee areas, which many school districts have already done within the state of California. And so she's here tonight to give you a summary overview of the process and what we are required to do as a public school district. And Allison, if you wouldn't mind in your conversation with the board, just mentioning the fact that if we get a demand letter, there are some other things that we have to do that we may want to avoid.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I'm Allison Deegan, and I just want to reacquaint some of you and introduce some of you to the trustee area process. It's mandated under the California Voting Rights Act. That's the current climate that we're in. The CVRA, as we call it, has been enacted for almost 20 years. And what it states in relevant part, in summary part, is that if a district elects at large and has no trustee areas, it's a fully at-large district, it may have what is called racially polarized voting. And that alludes to the inability of minority residents to elect minority members, and even the inability of minority candidates to run successfully. So if a district is an at-large district, you are subject to a challenge under the California Voting Rights Act. And at the county office, we staff, me and my team staff the Los Angeles County Committee on School District Organization, and that's the elected body. They are elected by school board members who oversee petitions to implement trustee areas. The petition can come proactively from the district by board resolution. It can come by valid signatures on a citizen-driven petition, or it can come based on legal action, either through what we call a demand letter, which is just a letter to the district from an attorney, from an organized group, from a resident who states, in the simplest terms, they basically state, because you do not have trustee areas, you may be in violation of the California Voting Rights Act. And that triggers an examination of the trustee areas from these other parties rather than by board action. In our opinion, the most effective way to move to trustee areas is proactively by action of the board. You are the people who are elected by the district, who know the district the best. And if you move forward in a trustee area process and hold your hearings and outreach and get community input and all of that, you'll be gathering a trustee area map that will have been vetted by your community, approved by the board by resolution, and that is what is presented to the county committee. I just would caution you, in a trustee area process, it is the county committee's map to implement. That's their right under the code, but they gladly accept a map submitted by the district that they fully vetted and followed all the regulations, and that's code compliant for them to consider. That's sort of the best case scenario, to start with a district presented map. If you wait and do not implement trustee areas, and you get a legal challenge either through litigation, through a demand letter, through a citizen petition, any map that's submitted in those channels, in those processes, will be considered not only within your district, but also by the county committee. So that's just a caution there. And we do recommend that when districts go down this road, that you're guided by attorneys who are specifically experienced with the California Voting Rights Act and with trustee areas, and also by demographers who have had the same specific experience. Some demographers do excellent work for the district in one way or another, but voting rights, trustee area mapping, and things of that sort, especially with the new data we've just gotten from the 2020 census, is really a specialty. So we would encourage the district to seek out those professionals so that your process is guided. The other thing I want to say before I'm happy to take your questions is the move to trustee areas often feels punitive to a district. Why do we have to do this? We've been elected. We're longtime incumbents sometimes. We're great public servants. Why do we have to go through this process and prove we're not violating anyone's rights? And what the advice I would give you to that is, in the 20 years that CVRA has been enacted, not a single challenge to it has survived. Every district that has been served with a demand letter, citizen petition, or any other action, even court action under CVRA, has eventually ended up with trustee areas. So the caution there is that CVRA may seem intrusive at first, but what we would encourage you to do is study your own community, be as open and inclusive as you can be with your community, really listen to them and see what they want. And if the end result is the implementation of trustee areas that impact the current incumbents on the board, that's an indication that that's what the community wants. It shouldn't be something that you fear, because if you fear it and don't take any action proactively on it, other parties can come and take that action for you, and you will go along and your district will end up with trustee areas. We don't see a pathway to challenge it. There is one city that is currently challenging it and may or may not be on its way to the US Supreme Court, but that can't provide guidance for us now. So in a nutshell, if you do not have trustee areas, our encouragement is to study your district under the guidance of an attorney and a demographer experienced in CVRA, and fully vet that process and involve the community. If you have to have multiple public hearings, have them in areas that are easily accessible. If you have to have multiple dialogues, if you want to get guidance from neighboring districts or other districts around the state, we can provide you a lot of information about what they have come to the county committee and presented. And the last thing I'll say is about timing. Moving into trustee areas can be a time-consuming process. We are now on the march to the November 2022 election. And that means if you move to trustee areas, your whole process needs to be fully concluded by May at the latest, in order to be able to field an election in trustee areas. Even though you're a small district, trustee areas can be drawn, I guarantee you, in every district. You may have demographics that would incline you to think, well, we don't have any racially polarized voting here. We don't have any demographic mismatch between student body, elected officials, and the general population, but that's what a demographic study will reveal. Even a district that's completely homogeneous is still under threat of legal action and a demand letter if they don't have trustee areas. What we like to say is there's no safe harbor from the California Voting Rights Act unless you implement trustee areas. So the timing becomes critical. And I would encourage the board to look at it now, to perhaps entertain a resolution to study the trustee area issue, guided by attorney and demographer, and then as soon as you can, come to a resolution about what action you want to take. Because if you decide to move to trustee areas, there are multiple public events you need to hold. There's multiple community involvement. There's even a point at which you might want to take the step of teaching your community how to be more involved, how to make maps, how to contribute to map composition. And then if any debate arises in your community, you'll be fully prepared to hold that debate. You won't be under time pressure where you have to take action in order to implement your next election. That's a very bad place to be. So in a nutshell, I think you're very wise to consider this issue proactively. And with everything that I know about the district, and I'm sure everyone knows what we heard tonight, the reputation is quite impressive, that you have a community that's engaged and that would likely respond to a robust discussion of these issues. And I'll just end before questions with a little short list of the kind of things that districts seem to think will preserve them from scrutiny under the California Voting Rights Act or from having to take any action. They often say we're too small. That doesn't matter. They often say we're either very diverse already on our board and in our community. Doesn't matter. What the activists who pursue CVRA claims say is that's your board today. At your next election, all of that could change. So that's why we need trustee areas. Or they say our community is monolithic, so there is no diversity to be found. How can we be chastised for that and forced to move to trustee areas? CVRA does not cover that. CVRA says if you don't have trustee areas, you could be subject to a claim. There's often a concern about longtime incumbents who may not fit in a trustee area scheme that is imposed on the district, and how that overrules the rights of the voters because the voters elected these people. Again, that challenge does not survive under CVRA. CVRA says if you don't have trustee areas and trustee area voting, you may be subject to a CVRA claim. So these are all the things that you should look at and try to examine, again, guided by some professionals. And you can certainly tap into myself and our team at the County Office of Ed. We've been through many CVRA claims. We have trained board members at CSBA. We have trained business officials at CASBO. We have trained county superintendents at CIFESA. And we have a group around the state called Secretaries to County Committees. So we're the people who staff county committee, and every county has one. And we collaborate with our colleagues at the CDE and at the State Board of Ed, exchanging information, exchanging best practices, sharing procedural issues that have guided districts to move from at-large to trustee areas. So you would have in the county office a repository not only of our institutional knowledge and our knowledge of our colleagues around the state, we also maintain a library of articles on the LACO website. There are hundreds of them at this point from all around the state. So if CVRA is new to you and you want to educate yourself, you can go to that. It's laco.edu and just find the county committee section. And we can send the links out and some other research materials for the board to look at. But you can go there and you can start reading through, because often districts are unaware of it until the neighboring district goes through it, or you do get a demand letter. And we would really encourage all of you to educate yourselves proactively and see the trends both in SoCal, in NorCal, around the state, and even out of state. There are some similar laws in other states. Not quite as rigorous as the CVRA, but there are others. So you can read many, many articles and sort of get a feel for how this process has unfolded. My last little tip I'll give you is, as you read through those articles, you'll see a trend I like to call the 5 stages of CVRA. It's very similar to the 5 stages of grief, right? Starts with denial, moves to anger, all that, you know, the stages of grief. And at the end, every single one of them had trustee areas. So I would encourage you to trust in that guidance and that advice. If you move proactively, you have the best chance to design a map and present it to the county committee that truly reflects your community with the wisdom that you all have. And skip those other steps about anger, about denial, about how can we prove we're not guilty of something, all of that. Believe me, we've all been through it, and we all arrived at a place of acceptance. It's the law in the state of California. We have made entreaty about adjusting it, because a lot of that law does not accommodate school districts, almost as if we don't exist. It's written for cities. It's written for other civic institutions, not for school districts that do things like basically close down in the summer, that have Christmas break and things like that. So the calendar for complying with CVRA does not comport with school districts at all. And we've tried to sort of move that. And the people who wrote the CVRA and the proponents who are activists and taking legal action around the state and in the legislature have no interest in changing it. So that's not, that's not a hope, oh, we'll adapt CVRA, we'll get it adjusted, it'll make more sense for districts. We've tried. So the best advice we can give you is, if you have to, as quick as you can, run through the 5 stages of CVRA and get to a place where you are once again, as you've all taken an oath to do, advocating for your district, including your district in those decisions and that input, and moving to what is nothing short of compliance with state law. So I know there's a lot of yakking here. I'd entertain your questions. I don't know that I can answer them all, especially about your specific condition, but I'll do my best to provide information. And like I said, we can send additional information on for the board to review. So does anyone have any questions?
I have a question. So
little tough to hear. So
I have a question.
Sure.
Louder.
So I know you keep talking about this demand letter and people trying to challenge it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just explain really simply, I'm not sure if I missed it, what if we just ignore all of it and we get a demand letter or we try to challenge it? What is the downside of doing something like that?
Years of upheaval and uncertainty and potentially millions of dollars. The city of Palmdale paid a settlement of almost $5 million. It's one of the largest in the state of California, right here from LA County. The city of Santa Monica, as I said, is currently involved in litigation. If I'm remembering correctly, currently at the California Appellate Court. Everyone expects it to go on its way to the US Supreme Court. That's tens of millions of dollars. The city of Whittier tried to challenge it and put together one of the most impressive responses I've ever seen about a 25-year history of civic engagement and just sort of an undeniable record of inclusiveness in their elections. They settled for $1 million. And school districts have not had verdicts quite that high. In the early days, they were very high. And then there was an adjustment to the ed code that limited the damages if you go through a legal challenge and inevitably do not win, because no one in the state of California has ever won. So the expectation is your district would not be the first, that you would also lose and have trustee areas implemented. the attorney fees are capped at $30,000, but there are other ways that those fees can go up. If you violate the timelines, you lose protection of that cap in fees and could potentially have fees assessed against you at an unlimited amount of money. If you actually go into court, a judge can assign any amount of damages that he or she chooses. And then you also have unrecoverable, even if you would win the challenge, you don't recover your own cost, your own attorney cost, demographer cost. We all know the value of professional staff being consumed with this. You may need outside counsel, all of that. So to try to challenge it, there have been many challenges by some of the top law firms in the state. They tried to instead say, we'll move our election to even year. Well, then they passed a law that almost every district has to move to even year to try to consolidate with the presidential and gubernatorial elections to boost voter turnout. So that didn't work. They tried to propose schemes, one of which is called cumulative voting. I'm sure some of you are familiar with that from other places. It's not constitutional in the state of California, so that wasn't a solution. And the districts that tried that just spent months and months and several years litigating those issues, eventually put in trustee areas. We've had many that have come to even as late as jury selection, then they settled, put in trustee areas. And these are settlements of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So that was the early days. It's not been quite that costly now, but it's still very divisive within the district. And if the chief complaint is, some of our duly elected and well-respected board members may lose their seats in a trustee area scheme, because if two of you end up living in the same slice of the pie, the same trustee area, one of you won't be able to run in the next election, right? So that's a big concern to board members. That just can't be your only concern. And a very talented demographer can take that concern, continuity of leadership, into consideration amongst the many factors that they use to draw the map. It just can't be the only factor, and it can't be the primary factor, right? The first. So you have to consider many other things that come under federal and state voting laws to compose your trustee areas, including, equal number of residents, and there are demographic schemes that are prohibited. You can't take all the minority voters and draw them into a crazy shape and put them all in one district. You can't separate minority members and sprinkle them here and there so that they can't accumulate a critical mass to elect like candidates. So there are all kinds of, there are about 7 or 8 significant criteria that your demographer must go through, and the trustee areas have to pass those tests. And one factor that can be considered, like I said, is continuity of leadership. It just can't be, number one, we're going to preserve our incumbents. That can't be the approach, right? That's illegal. And it can't be the only thing you consider. So there are ways to do it, but a demand letter, if you choose to quote unquote fight it, it will inevitably take a long time where you remain with that uncertainty, and it doesn't stop another party from filing another demand against you. As long as you don't have trustee areas, you are vulnerable to legal action under the CVRA.
And the demand letter has to be issued from somebody within the jurisdiction, or it can be issued
No,
to anyone?
no. And it doesn't really even need the classic version that we have of a plaintiff who's aggrieved, who wants to file something against the district. It's really just a letter. It's not a legal document. So often we see them issued by attorneys. They are going up and down the state and issuing multiple demand letters to many, many, many jurisdictions, not just schools, airport districts, hospital districts, mosquito abatement districts. Basically every district where officials are elected is ripe for a challenge under CVRA if they don't have trustee areas. So the plaintiffs' attorneys who have specialized in this have taken legal action, really formally going into court and things of that sort, or taken the demand letter route and submitted them to districts. And once you get it, a very specific clock starts ticking of the timeline in which you have to do certain things. If you can't make that timeline work, for example, one of the most common challenges for schools is you don't like to hold public hearings of any import in the middle of summer, right? The community isn't there. You certainly don't want to hold it between Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? Or during the pandemic, it was really, really challenging to, even though we moved to online meetings, to get people informed and participating in issues like this. So schools are very sensitive to the periods of time when their community is not available. The CVRA gives no leave for that. So if you get a demand letter and an attorney is pushing that timeline, you may be at a point where the person who is taking this action against the district is the person you have to ask for more time so you can vet your community. And they could say no. If you violate these really tight timelines under CVRA, you could potentially get out of that $30,000 cap in fees protected zone and go back into the world we once had of unlimited potential damages because you violate the timeline. And the timelines are very tight. Once the process is started by a demand letter or legal action, the timelines are very tight. There are all kinds of constituencies within your district that you have to consult with. There are multiple public hearings that you have to have before you even have a sample map. There are multiple hearings that you have to have after you have the map, things like that. That's the timeline that you're under when you are working in response to a CVRA challenge versus doing it proactively. If you do it proactively, it's a much more simpler process and the district remains in control of it, not an external actor who's taking action against the school district. So those are some of the differences there. The other one of the most concerning ones is, say your district doesn't take any action and you get a demand letter inquiring about you may be in violation of the trustee of the California Voting Rights Act. Say you get that letter in April. You're not going to implement trustee areas in time for the November election. It won't be possible. So your choice would be going along and going along in the process or responding however you want and scheduling that election. We've seen several times in the state a judge cancel a scheduled election. We've seen a judge overrule the results of an election because they happened in a climate when a CVRA challenge has been filed and the election went on anyway. And what they said was, that's a flawed election. That's an election that now violates the California Voting Rights Act. So we have to call it back or we have to cancel it and reschedule it in the future. That's amongst the most devastating things you can do because the community is very confused by that. And it could dissuade them from voting in the future, especially this is all before the climate we've had in recent years about not trusting election results and things of that sort. So you just don't ever want to be in a situation where you've waited too long and a trustee area challenge comes and you can't respond in the timeline and try to hold your election. That election could be canceled and that election results could be overruled. That's the most egregious example, other than millions of dollars in fines. But those are the kinds of things we don't want you to be bounded by. And now that we finally have the census data, it came months late. Any district that's if you have trustee areas, you must review them at every census. So districts are now scrambling just to review their current trustee areas and make sure they're still code compliant so that they can get to the November election without any concern or any delay, and that nobody doesn't make another challenge at them that they didn't review their trustee areas. So they're out of date. So for a district newly considering implementing them, I would say you have a lot of work to do and you have to move relatively quickly, guided by, as I said, experienced professionals, and it's possible to do, but in a few months it won't be possible to do, and you could still get the demand letter anyway. So it puts you in a really precarious position. And if you think, look to the district to the left, the district to the right, they don't have it. We haven't really seen a rhyme or reason pattern about these CVRA challenges. A few of them have come in communities that are definitely in internal demographic struggles, both for leadership, for used to be majority this group, now it's majority this group, that they've transited over the decades in LA County. We've seen demand letters come in a 100% minority district with a 100% minority board. We've seen them come in a district that is basically 6 square miles in size. We've seen them come in a vast district where you can't even draw trustee, the slices of the pie all have to radiate from the one population center that they have out into its vast uninhabited areas. So, doesn't seem appropriate for CVRA, but the challenge.
Begin.
So, yeah.
We have a question, I believe, from a board member.
I appreciate all the input that
Mhm.
that you're providing to us. I think it's very valuable. I'm just wondering if parts of this issue perhaps should be closed session or not, considering the different paths in which can be followed. And so rather than more of a detailed discussion and open, I don't know the answer, but I am wondering if perhaps some of it might be closed session issues.
Absolutely. That's been the practice that I've observed. I don't go into closed session, but that's why I said I couldn't answer, your situation specifically, if this, then that kind of a thing, because it is in the category of potential litigation.
So we did talk to council about that, and they said that if we had received a demand letter, that it would be a properly agendized item for closed under anticipated litigation, but because we have not, and we're just talking about the process, this discussion belongs in open session. Having said that, we can,
No, I
on to other things.
appreciate that input, and I have no further questions for now.
And I will say your demographics are public,
Yeah.
even the census update. So the strategizing around that is I think the kind of things that boards strategize around all the time. And there should be no concern, with an involved community that you wouldn't be able to get there with them and get their input and get their support.
So do we have any other questions?
I think we're good. Thank
Okay,
you.
Allison, thank you so much for your
Thank
time. We
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you. And we'll send some material that can be passed along to all of you. And don't forget, the LACO website has got a whole library, and we are available to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank
You have a
you.
great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, 11D, budget update. Dr. Delatorre will introduce Mr. John Gray.
Thank you, President Ryan, members of the Board of Education, executive team, student board member. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce to you this evening Mr. John Gray, who is the President and CEO of School Services of California. And School Services of California is the premier firm providing support and assistance to school districts up and down the state on budget, finance, collective bargaining. I believe they also do executive searches, et cetera. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Mr. Gray.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Delatorre, members, Board of Education, Administration. It is truly my honor to be here. I've always wanted to come to the highest achieving school district in the state of California, and I've finally made it. And I have to say, I've probably been to 500 school board meetings in my career. And with the exception of that last item, this was one of the most uplifting board meetings I've ever been to. So you have a lot to be proud of. And it's my pleasure to kind of give you my ideas and thoughts about your budget. So I'm going to get right to it and respect your time. I'm happy to take questions anytime you want to ask them. So let's talk about in general. So as you are likely aware, you are a lower funded district in the state of California. You rely on the state of California for the local control funding formula, which is 63% of your budget. And because of the demographics or the unduplicated pupil percentage, free and reduced price meal status, English learners, et cetera, as a result, you don't get as much per student as neighboring districts. And so that left pie chart is just taking your general fund and just breaking down the revenues and how you get them. And so, for instance, you get about 63% of your revenue from the state of California in the form of the local control funding formula. You get a little bit from the federal government, not very much, and you get some other funding from the state of California. That's not the local control funding formula. Think about lottery, mandated cost reimbursements, things like that. And so the reason you're able to do all the remarkable things that you do in this district that I mean, deep admiration when I say that, is because you have the buy-in from all of your stakeholders, your local community. So that other local is your community stepping up and saying, you know, we don't like the hand we've been dealt from the state of California on our revenues, but we're going to take control of it ourselves. So locally, stakeholders, members of this community have stepped up and said, we want more, we want better. And they have stepped up in the form of parcel taxes, foundations. And so on the right-hand side, that's the average district in the state. And you can see how those percentages are wildly different. Most school districts rely heavily on the state of California. They tend to get more money per student based on their demographics. And they are able to do things that you would not be able to do unless you had the local support. And so the fact that your community trusts you with the funds is remarkable, something to be very, very proud of. Having said that, you're going to have some budget challenges coming your way that are not self-inflicted. They're based on funding and how the state of California goes, how they fund per pupil, and I'll get into some of those. But I wanted to start off and say, you're not like other districts. You pretty much grab the ball and run with it and generate your own revenues to have the outstanding programs for students that you have in this district. So here's one of the big culprits. It's the concept of declining enrollment. This is not a unique San Marino problem. This is a state problem. These are the top declining counties in the state. These are projections done by the California Department of Finance. There's data of the prior years. Los Angeles County has always been one of the larger declining enrollment districts. And so obviously you're here in Los Angeles County and you are experiencing declining enrollment. Simply said, declining enrollment is like a financial stranglehold. So just think of it very simply. If you get $10,000, let's say per kid, and a kid leaves your district, it's almost impossible to reduce your expenditures accordingly for that loss. You're not going to lay off an employee. You might save a little on instructional materials, that sort of thing. And your kids don't get up and leave in one classroom in one school and leave. They leave from all over your district. And naturally, when you lose those revenues, you do get a one-year reprieve. It's very, very difficult to cut your expenditures accordingly to accommodate that loss of revenue because of the fact that you're losing students. And so this is now a statewide problem. It's a problem in this county. It's a problem all over the state, and you're not immune from it. So that's one of the characteristics I'm going to talk about that's going to be impacting your finances going forward. And I like the statement from one of you on the board about we're in this together. We're in it for the long run because it's going to take the best minds in this community to make sure that they can keep these outstanding programs, keep things going in this district. If you've stepped up in the past and you're going to have some challenges going forward. So the other issue with declining enrollment, and these are statewide numbers and national numbers, is regarding special education. So special education is the funding is based on your entire enrollment for the entire district, which is declining. But special ed populations in California aren't declining. They're staying the same or actually growing. And so what we're seeing statewide, with special ed, the services are based on the IEP, and they should be. It's whatever it takes to service that student. And that I wish it would be that way for all students, but it is that way for special ed students. And as part of that requirement, the federal government's supposed to fund about 40% of it. They've never funded 40% of it. It's been around 10%. So the rest of the money to support special ed comes out of your unrestricted general fund. And this is just another characteristic of declining enrollment, where we're not seeing it in our special ed populations, but we're seeing it overall, and our funding is based on overall funding. This is an issue that needs to be addressed at the state level, in my opinion. So one of the things I've seen statewide, and it's happened here too, when the pandemic hit, we pretty much shut things down for a long time. And it's amazing how much money you can save when you're not operating schools. You don't have substitute costs, you're not, the utilities, services. And so during the pandemic, because we were shut down, most districts in the state of California saved a lot of money, right? And you're no different. But these numbers right here, let me explain what they are, because I'll only have to do it once because there's some more numbers coming up. These are state certified numbers from the state of California. CDE certifies them, the controller's office, your county office. CTA has this database. Everyone has this database. It's a common database for comparing districts. And this data is through 1920. And I know 1920 is done, but think about it. You just closed 2021 and you haven't even gotten the audit yet. Once that audit goes in, those numbers will be in too. But I just wanted to point out the trends. You have been declining enrollment. This is your ADA as reported to the state of California in the state database. But look at the all unified districts. That's all districts in the state unified. So they're declining also. All elementary districts are declining. High school districts fairly flat. So this is a statewide issue. And yours is going a little bit faster than we're seeing on the statewide average. There are actually some districts in the state that are growing, but very few. I believe the number is 70% of districts are now declining enrollment. It's a big issue. You're not alone. They're dealing with some of the same issues you are. The other thing I just want to mention briefly is when we shut down schools and kids weren't coming to school and we were still trying to get our arms around everything, how we're going to do distance learning and all that. The state kind of did us a favor and they knew districts were declining enrollment and they said, you know what, we're going to hold you harmless to whatever your ADA was in 1920 as of the end of February. That was right before we shut down in March, if you recall. So whatever the ADA was, we're going to hold you harmless for 2 years. So right now, you're funded based on your 1920 ADA. But in 2021, you got funded on that ADA, and we didn't really count ADA in 2021, so there's no data. So 21, 22, we're going to be funded at the same level. But in 22, 23, which is your next year coming up, right now it's the end of that hold harmless. So basically, your budget right now for the current year is based on a higher ADA than you currently have because you've been declining and you got to use 1920. That is scheduled to go away in 22, 23. Your budget already has appropriately accounted for that. It's in your numbers. Right now, that's the situation. There is hope that they do something about it because they now have seen the data come in and statewide, and this is going to be a huge problem. So they're actually talking about it, but right now you can't plan for it. You have to plan as if 22, 23, you're going to be funded at your 21, 22 ADA because you get that 1 year protection. So this is what's making everybody nervous throughout the state. It's no different for you. So some characteristics of enrollment decline. This is a generic slide I stole from the Fiscal Crisis Management and Assistance team. With their permission, I stole it. But some of the things that happen just on the natural, your cost of servicing your salary schedules tends to go up because you're not bringing in newer teachers at the lower part, the ones you have are staying, going through step and column. You see on the natural class sizes begin to shrink and smaller class sizes, they're outstanding. They're just very expensive. And so these are some of the other things. That one issue that I don't think impacts you is negative public perception. I mean, you have a stellar reputation and I don't think that one impacts you. But just some of the things that declining enrollment districts have to deal with. This is your historic fund balance, your unrestricted fund balance. That's what the county looks at for solvency. It's not, your restricted programs or categoricals. This is the unrestricted. And watching it over time from 2013, 14 through 19, 20, I will say it has gone up. Again, we closed schools, saved a lot of money. You're no different. The good thing about fund balance is it allows you to be more thoughtful and strategic going forward. And I'll explain that in a minute. So these again are statewide numbers. And so these are 1920, that low point, you were spending down your fund balance.
And you can see the average for elementary districts unified or high school districts. And over on the far right, that's converted to the percentage that we often talk about, the minimum 3% and then whatever's extra. And so the statewide averages for elementary districts are like 22%, 18 for unified, and high school 17%. And so you were lower in the average. And that was going into the pandemic. Again, you did save a lot of money, like all other school districts. And so that fund balance is now higher. The reason I keep hammering on fund balances, you're reliant on the state of California, even though you get a smaller portion of LCFF, that's the lion's share of your revenues. And I've been doing this for 30 years and I've seen it really turn on a dime. And so when we looked at the last recession, the Great Recession, about 07, 08, 09 going forward, and we looked at fund balances, what districts were sitting on when they hit that recession, we saw substantial differences. The ones that hit that recession with a fund balance, they didn't have to do knee-jerk reactions to the bottom of the economy falling out. They had time to think and had time to be strategic, which allowed them to be kinder to their employees, more humane. So they were able to do things like, early retirement program, exiting people in a good way because they had a fund balance. It didn't kill them in 1 year. Those that didn't have significant fund balances, they had to do some horrific things like furloughing employees immediately, cutting health and welfare benefits and things like that. So again, that fund balance, I think allows the district to be more thoughtful and strategic as you're dealing with declining enrollment and any other issues the state of California might throw at you. So these are from your staff. And as you can see, the enrollment going forward, you can start to see with 1920. There is an uptick in TK3. You may be familiar that the governor's proposal for UTK, adding 2 months every year. And so I believe that's part of that little uptick. But you can see in the other grades still projected to decline, which drives those revenues. So that gets into your MYPs. This is from your staff. I met with your staff, your district staff, Ms. Suzuka, who's been helping you. And so right now, based on what we know today, now this is important, multi-year projections, right? The further you get out, the harder they are to estimate. And so the key is when you make projections is you want to have documented assumptions that you can explain to your community. And you want to anchor those assumptions on industry standard assumptions. And so, for instance, on your revenues, you're likely using the LA County Office of Ed projected COLAs in the out year. So as an example, in 22-23, you're using a COLA of 2.48, and so is everybody else in the state, right? That was the last number. That number dates back to May. We're going to get new numbers in January. And if, just reading the tea leaves, I think the COLA goes up a little bit because we're feeling it, inflation, right? Well, the COLA is an inflation number. And so that's just one example on, this is our snapshot today. This is the mathematical result based on the assumptions that we put into it. And so the important part is we use industry standard assumptions. You are doing that. You haven't missed anything. And so it's the best. But the key point is in January, these are going to change, right? Every time there's a checkpoint with the state budget, every time you do a subsequent MYP, you're going to have better information, right? Right now, you're forecasting. And the thing I really like is you guys do 4 years. County looks at 3, you do 4. I think that's very smart. So those numbers in the yellow are the forecasted deficits. This would be the impact to the fund balance. And so, looking, $10 million is a lot higher than 10%, but I think that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. So as you go forward and look at your declining enrollment, do your collective bargaining, all that sort of thing, having that fund balance is nothing to apologize for. I think it's something that will add stability to your district and help you be more thoughtful and strategic as you envision what what San Marino is going to look like 2-3 years down the road. So, and then these are the components of your reserve. So you saw the total balance, that's at the bottom, but these are how you have decided to either designate or assign these things. And I think appropriately, I mean, you have stores, you have to do that, the 108,000. Cash flow, again, that's a big issue. If you don't have fund balance, you know, it impacts your cash flow. You don't want to run out of cash. Future stabilization, you have some COP payments. Those are general fund lease payments that you're going to have to account for, and declining enrollment. And so I think assigning them now is important. And then as you move forward, you have that discussion. Do we want to unassign it? Do we want to increase the assignments? So right now, all of those are assigned. And so just I want to add one point. So at each checkpoint, you have a decision to make about the fund balance. An assignment is where you have your staff assign it, and it comes to the board and everything. The other thing you can do is commit the funds. That's actually a board action where you would say, whatever it is, COP payments, we're going to actually commit those funds. And the reason that's significant is you may or may not be aware, the reserve cap trigger is scheduled to come up next year, right? And so it was very specific in the law that recognize when you have situations like this. So my advice to you, if you want to continue doing these, I would commit these funds, take the action to commit them. And that's a board action, and it's exempt from whatever reserve cap. And I think that would be a smart move, just my recommendation. So next steps, you know, you're in this budget, right? You are operating. And so this budget, a lot of it was based on estimates. And now, you know, the kids have shown up, the teachers have been hired, or they've moved down step and column. So your staff right now is refining the budget. Your next big step, your next checkpoint is the first interim report, which you're scheduled to get in December. That's that peak through October 31st. It's required to come to you. There's a positive, negative qualified certification. It goes to the county office, gets reported up to the state. It's what the county office looks at in determining your financial certification. In January, the unaudited actuals, second interim in March, these are various checkpoints where you're always recalibrating. Those multi-year projections should change every time because the data changes every time. Those things should be moving. Now, I'm not saying a lot or not a lot, but when you have new and better information, you have a responsibility to put it in the multi-year projection and see what the impact is locally. And then the whole, you know, budget process, you know, coming up in January, Governor Newsom's going to announce his budget based on the Department of Finance's estimates of what next year is going to be. He will announce the cost of living adjustment. It won't be final. There's 8 data points in the cost of living adjustment. There's 8 quarters ending in the first quarter of the year before the COLA. So it ends in April. So right now there's 6 data points. In January we'll have 7, and then in April the COLA will be final. The May revision will come out. You will revise your budget based on the governor's May revise. And you will adopt your budget on the May revise because that's the best information you have, and you have to do it by June 30th. But at the same time, the legislators finalizing their budget, which is, I know, which they're required to do at June 30th. So you're going to adopt a budget based on the vision of the governor in May. It's not finalized until June, and any significant changes from what you adopted that was in the final budget, you're going to have a 65-day revision. And so, so overall, it was, I mean, truly a pleasure to work. It was a pleasure to attend the board meeting. I really enjoyed it. It's really uplifting. You have a lot to be proud of. Keep it going. These are challenges. These are not self-inflicted wounds, but they're things that you're going to have to deal with and face. And so I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It was very, very informative. I want to ask a question about, can you explain, the COLA and how the formula is based, how the COLA formula is based and how it relates to our district?
Okay, that's a great question. And I'm going to try to do it in layman's as much, but it gets kind of technical. So the COLA is it comes out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's actually a federal number. And it's the implicit price deflator of state and local governments. It's basically an index, whereas the CPI might, how it impacts my life. This is for specific state and local governments. And it's a federal number. And so there's debate whether that's, the reason they did that is so they couldn't you couldn't have the legislators mess with the COLA. It's a federal number. And so the COLA, what pretty much happens at the state level, we have Proposition 98, and the COLA is completely separate. We've had years where the COLA was 3%, let's say, but Prop 98 was suffering and they didn't fund it, right? Most governors, if there's money to fund it, they're going to fund it. That's the first and highest priority. That's whatever all the school districts say. Yes, give us local discretion on how we use those monies. That's the highest priority. But right now, we don't have the final COLA number. So what happens with you with a declining enrollment district? Because you'll hear a figure. Let's say it's 5%. I think the current COLA is 5.07, right? But when you hear the COLA, you don't get percentages, you get dollars. You don't get percentage, you get dollars. So let me go back to this one slide if you don't mind. So I think it'll help illustrate. So you get COLA on the LCFF. So this year, the 5.07, you got it on 63% of your revenues. You didn't get the COLA on the federal revenues. You got lower COLAs on the other state, and I'm not sure exactly what you got on your local property tax. And so one thing is you don't get the COLA on all your revenues, right? You get dollars. You don't get 5%, you get dollars. If you're declining enrollment, you're not going to get 5% more than you got the prior year. You would if you had the same amount of students, but you have less students. So as a result, your funding increase, you could get a 5% COLA. And if your decline was sufficient enough, I've seen districts not get a new dollar, okay? So it's important to understand what it applies to, what the characteristics of our district are. If you're growing, it's great news, right? It's great news. If you're flat, it's good news. If you're declining, you definitely need it. You need it to be bigger to cover your declining enrollment. So I hope I'm not going on too long on this, but it's the vehicle that the state of California uses to recognize that it costs more to do what you did the year prior. And so it's to cover everything. It's to cover fuel, the cost of electricity, covering health benefits, covering all sorts of things. And so typically, if you're declining enrollment, you're not going to get that 5.7%. And there's a lot of things that go to it. So for instance, most districts will look at the COLA dollars, not the percent, and say, okay, how much are we going to pay for the increase in PERS? Or how much are we going to pay for the increase in STRS, those pension payments that are going up, step and column. And so in most districts, if you go through that calculation, there's a good portion of that cost of living adjustment that's already baked into your budget if you just plan on doing what you did the prior year. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I just ask that the suggestion that you had briefly discussed about committing funds on
Yes.
the 10 million, there's nothing that requires that we do that right now. Is that correct?
Oh, there's no requirement. That's local discretion. That's for you to decide as a school board.
Okay, and then it would be obviously a decision based on, I mean, the more information we have, the better. The
Right.
more information we got about next year's budget and COLA from the state, and the state's budget may be very helpful to help us in making a decision about what we should do with that money.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you.
Well, first, I just wanted to thank you. This was very informative. My question has to do with when we're looking at if you can go back to slide number 8, 7 or 8, either one works. It kind of shows the end balance.
This one or this one?
Actually, sorry, that one. So when we're looking.
So let me explain. Let me take another stab because I didn't go deep into this. This is out of the statewide database. And so the state of California, CDE, FICMAT, they break everything down on a per student basis. I didn't take the time to do that. I apologize. So this is the amount per 88. So simply said, it takes your financial statements that go up to the state from your audited financial statements, and it takes every category. So I could have shown you teacher salaries. It could have been, $5,000 a kid, or classified salaries, $3,000 a kid. So this is just taking your fund balance and converting it to a per ADA basis. And so you can see the 958, that's your ending fund balance for the general fund. The state counts Fund 17 towards that. You add those two together, you get the 15 per student. But that 10.13 takes your budget and figures out what it is as a percent of total expenditures, transfers, and other uses. And that's when you hear, I need the 3%, it's calculated the same way. So that includes your 3% and your total is 10.3%.
Okay, and then if you can go forward another.
Forward.
Sorry, I think I'm looking for the one I saw labeled 8. It's the one with the comparing the ending balances over the multi-year.
Oh,
I think that might be actually further.
yeah, let me see. This one?
Yes, okay, so that one there. That's kind of a scary number.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about what's happening there?
Sure. So, so your revenue lines are taking a hit. Remember when I talked about that hold harmless? You are planning for that, right? For next year. And right now you're projecting it's significant enough because it's a cumulative 2 years. You're getting 2 years of declining enrollment in 1 year. And so your LCFF revenues, which is the 63% of your revenues, are actually less than you have in the current year. It's significant enough, and it's got a 2.48% COLA, but based on your estimates of how many students you're going to have, that takes a cut, right? So there's like there's a downstroke on your largest source of revenues. And then on the natural, when budgeting in the out years, you're going to have to budget for step and column. So your revenues took a downstroke and kind of went like this, but your expenditures on the natural continue to increase. It costs more to do the same things you do based on economic factors you get from the county office of ed. And so, in order for that not to happen, different things can happen. The state could come through and save the day on the hold harmless. They could, I'm just being whimsical here. They could do things to impact your revenue. Your attendance could come in higher. You could make decisions on the expenditure lines. As you get smaller, you're going to have some tough decisions that come your way because most districts find themselves where they need less employees as they get smaller. So if you make adjustments there, that's one way you address that. The other way is, the state does better. But on the natural, your expenditures go up like this, and it should be on the natural. If you are flat and you're just getting cost, you should be like this. What's happening is it's coming like this for you because of the declining enrollment hitting your major source of revenues.
So I guess my question to that would be, sometimes there is a fear or a concern when you look at that, when someone looks at a decline in balance like that, that there was some sort of mismanagement.
Yeah, no, this happens on the natural. I could show you 200 districts that look like this, and it's not a self-inflicted wound. It's what's happening to them, and they're just going to have to respond.
So what would be some of the strategies that we would want to look to if we're looking at a multi-year budget? What are some of the multi-year strategies we can really be thinking about as we're planning now for 3-4 years out?
Yeah, what a lot of districts do is they come up with what they call a budget stabilization plan for declining enrollment. And right now it's a guess, and they usually have ranges, I don't know if you use a demographer or what, but you could get a range. We could go as low as this, we could go as high, right? And have those plans and put your priorities out there. I mean, you have some outstanding programs for students here. And you're going to have to be forward thinking and strategic as you manage your budget to keep those programs. I mean, that's what makes this place great. You're also going to want to keep good employees. So there might be a component in that strategic plan to make sure that, you can attract and retain outstanding employees. And so it's usually not done in isolation. Typically those are done by committees, things like that involve various stakeholders. But getting out in front and educating your community is going to be important. It's not an easy concept for people to process. And so I think communicating early and often, and then coming up with a multi-year strategic plan. And the good news for you is, your ending balance allows you to look into the future. You're not in triage mode. You're not having to decimate your outstanding programs for kids to accommodate this. And so as long as you have that lead time and taking action early. So for instance, if you cut $1 in year one in a multi-year budget, that's 3 years to the fund balance because it's ongoing, right? And so by addressing it when it's in front of you and not hoping it gets better, you actually end up having to reduce less than if you just wait until you get all the way down and say, oh boy, we need to cut. And so you can make that glide path moves more significantly if you take action early. So 'cause again, $1 cut in year one on a multi-year projection for year 3, you save $3.
So from your presentation, I don't see how much we are spending in the maintenance repair. But for this projection, I even think very conservative because for all the expenditure, we are the labor cost already about probably 89%, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we only have a 10% to spend everything.
Right.
And in the meantime, our physical plant, they need to replace like air condition or whatever equipment.
Yeah.
That even will make this worse.
Oh yeah, and so you have a deferred maintenance fund for those types of things. And
so I don't know how much we budget for each.
Yeah, there's a line item of transfer to there's a specific, I don't have it here, but
There's not enough in that
Not
to
enough,
support the needs of the district over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, we need to think about create the alternative for the revenues. So the bond, if we cannot initiate another bond, and then that also will have go to the back cycle.
Yeah. A school bond would help you out tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mr. Gray, can you go back one slide?
Sure.
Oh, one more. I think it was in the enrollment.
This?
No, maybe I'm thinking of a slide Pearl had. No. No, it's okay. No, no, we were looking at the amount of revenue that we were going to lose next year, 22, 23,
Right.
if we were funded on, you can be funded on that year or the
Prior year.
prior year, whichever is higher.
Yes.
So if we were funded on our ADA for the current year, and it looked like it was $1.4 million.
I believe so. I
Yeah.
don't have those committed.
You,
to
you saw
memory.
that also, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that that was, the number.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, your MYP and multi-year projection and all that have, the assumptions are solid. Just recognize they're going to change.
Mhm. And that would be strictly, based on the number of students we're projecting to lose, but being funded on the P2 ADA for this current year
Yes.
instead of next year.
Yes.
And, okay,
Yes. So in 22, 23, you're going to use 21, 22.
right. And so
Which
people
is,
get
which
confused
is
about
a
that.
two steps below 19, 20.
Right.
Yes.
But going forward, when we're in the 23, 24 school year, then we're looking at either, that year or 22, 23, whichever is higher.
You always get to budget the higher of the current year or the prior.
But we're still going down
Yes.
based on our projections.
Yes.
So right now it's November.
Yes.
So we are preparing the multiple year budget. So you think for the California governor, what kind of condition in the May, finally in the May revise next year may have a good news?
Yeah.
Or you think maybe the worst news?
Yeah. Well, so if you watch state revenues, I mean, so goes the fortune of the California budget that translates into funding for California school districts. And if you look at the governor's projection when he adopted the budget, we monitor it on a monthly basis. So do, the Department of Finance puts out a report. And right now, taxes are coming in a robust manner. The big three, which are, the income tax, sales tax, and corporate tax, are significantly above projected. Okay. And so our wealthiest Californians are doing really well right now because we have a very progressive tax system. And so when our wealthiest Californians do well, our state budget does well, it translates into funding for schools. I mean, that's just the way it works. And so right now taxes are coming up in a robust way. And so we think the governor will have options to do things in a positive way for schools. Proposition 98, we're going to be in a test one environment. I don't want to get too in the weeds, but basically we get a slice of the budget between 38 and 39%. So whatever the budget pie is, Prop 98, which is TK 14, community colleges are in there. We get that slice of the budget. And because we're a declining enrollment state, overall as a state, we're losing kids. We're going to get that slice and then we're going to divide it among less kids. So there's an opportunity to get more per student. The big question will be, what do they do with that? Because they had that opportunity this year, right? And so what did they do? Well, last year you didn't get a cost of living adjustment. You got zero. And so the governor and the legislature decided to say, okay, you didn't get last year, you're not going to get it, but I'll give it to you this year and I'll add the current year COLA. And because the cost of unemployment insurance has gone up, I'll give another percent. That's how you got to that 5.07. You got 2 years of COLAs and they added 1%. Okay. But there was still more money in Prop 98 to do more than just fund the cost of living adjustment for all the school districts. And so, I mean, if Governor Brown was governor, I'll tell you exactly where that money go. They put it all in the base grant. But what we've seen these last couple of years is targeting money with strings attached. So you're not, you're an LCFF district, but you're not what's called a concentration district with high concentrations of populations of free and reduced English learners, foster youth. And so what he did is he added a percentage to that. So a lot of districts got a lot more money than you did, with strings attached. And so in general, I have confidence in locally elected school boards to know what's best for their community and do the right things for students in their community. So I'm a big proponent for just giving it to you, for you to decide locally how to, my glasses are fogging up, on how to spend those dollars. But what we've seen, and that's how Governor Brown did it. And so we're going to have to wait and see. Hopefully, if there's more money, that they pass it on in the form of maybe a increased cost of living adjustment. But he will, in my opinion, he'll have options. He'll have good options. It's what options he takes, which would be speculation right now on my part.
How about right now, everyone pay attention about the EDI issue. So the governor is will prioritize for the special education funding more.
Yeah, so that's the bit of the good news that we've seen. For many years, special ed, there was no extra money for special ed. They got low cost of living adjustments. The philosophy, I believe, at the state was they wanted to reform the funding model. They did, and special ed in general. There was a perception that you know, a lot of it went to attorney fees and advocates. I mean, whether that's the perception at the time. So we didn't see any money coming to special ed. Governor Newsom, however, has actually put money towards special ed, which is very positive in my view, and I think helps relieve your financial pressures on your general fund. So there's a big push. The special ed funding advocates, you know, feel that opportunity and they're pressing very hard. And so far, it's been working pretty good. There's at least progress. So we hope it keeps going.
All right, the board is, Mr. Gray, thank you so much. We can't thank you enough for your trip to see us and the wealth of knowledge that you provided, and for the robust conversation. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Truly an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, now, Dr. Richter, Educator Effectiveness Block Grant, bring us home.
Oh, isn't?
Is Jason?
Another item?
I think that's
It's an action item. It's an action item, so we'd have to.
Oh, okay.
Oh, this is an action item?
No.
No. Oh, this one, yeah, but there's one after that, but
Right.
in the
Okay.
information section, I have to finish this one.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, no. I'm sorry.
Sorry, we tried to
we
lay
had-
off.
Well, thank you.
Somebody.
I got
Thank you.
There I go, here.
Thank you, President Ryan, members of the board, student board member, Dr. Delatoria, superintendent, and executive team. Tonight, I will be presenting a brief overview of the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant Expenditure Plan. The plan does need to be presented to the board in a public board meeting and then in a subsequent board meeting adopted. And it has to be adopted before December 30th of 2021. And taking into consideration that we only have 2 board meetings left until December, up to December 30th, 2021, we are presenting it tonight as an informational item and then bringing it back to the board for consideration of approval on December 9th. Thank you. The purpose of this presentation for the board is to provide a brief overview of what the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant is, share how the funds are to be allocated per the requirements of the plan, and then share next steps. The Educator Effectiveness Block Grant, trying to say that fast 5 times, does provide one-time program funding to provide professional learning, to promote education equity, quality, and effectiveness. The total apportionment SMUSD is scheduled to receive is $644,463.
The grant is a 5-year grant, which means the funds may be expended during the 2021, 22, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 25, 26 school years. All of the money does not have to be expended equitably among all the years. It can all be spent the first year, or it can be divided up as the district chooses to do so. And as we said, it has to be adopted on or before December 30th of this year. Pursuant to Ed Code, the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant expenditures must be spent on these items. Support for professional learning for certificated teachers, administrators, paraprofessional educators, and certificated, excuse me, that's a typo. That should be classified staff, not certificated staff. The allowable block grant expenditures or activities also must coordinate and align with Title II activities that we have identified and delineated in our LCAP federal addendum. And the activities that are outlined in the LCAP federal addendum under Title II are directly intended for professional development for certificated and for classified staff and administrators. And as a school district, we also want to make sure that our expenditures and our activities under the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant align with our LCAP priorities, which directly align to our board priorities. And those are exemplary teaching and learning, flourishing learning environments, and authentic and meaningful connections.
What is the professional?
Paraprofessionals, those are our instructional educational assistants, whether they'll be in the general ed classroom or inclusion aides that are also supporting our students and our teachers in the special education classrooms. So some of the uses for the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant have to be provided under these 10 areas, although not all 10 areas need to be included. And they range from, of course, coaching and mentoring staff, re-engaging students to accelerate learning, social emotional learning, which we have heard consistently over the past few months, year, that this is a really important topic, individuals with exceptional needs, professional learning networks, and early childhood education. These are the 10 areas that are outlined by the plan or per the plan that we are allowed to spend these funds on. So how SMUSD has allocated the plan, you do have in your board pockets the actual plan where we have outlined the activities per the areas that are required for the plan. And this is just a brief overview of how we have allocated the funds. And you can take a look at it. We have really prioritized where we have traditionally allocated funds to support student learning, social, emotional, academic, student success, as well as our current climate now and where our needs as a school district fall.
Can you talk about social emotional learning? So what kind of curriculum or the subject?
Sure, absolutely. Stephen, are you able to pull up the plan as well? And we can go to that one section for social emotional learning. So this would really be intended to support staff, certificated, classified, management as well on providing professional development to, number one, increase capacity and expertise within our staff to be able to then share best practices, best instructional programs for implementation at our schools for our students, to ensure that we are providing a rigorous instructional program, not only academically, but especially social, emotionally, for the well-being of our students and mental health. And so it's a little small for me. Perfect. And I think you have to scroll down just a little bit. Go back up. I believe it's one more. One more, 4. There we go, number 4. And so what we have said here is expand and continue to seek effective social emotional learning programs. Some of the programs that we have already implemented at the elementary level, as well as through the wellness center at the high school, which is trickling down to the middle school and the elementary level as well. This includes curriculum, it includes best practices, and it also includes release time provided by subs so that our teachers can engage in professional development not only to understand if there's curriculum that we're going to be adopting, but the best instructional practices to support social emotional well-being for our students. It also includes, as we can see here, our partnerships that we have with Care Solas, our Chinatown Service Center, and any other external organization or partner that we choose to work with to provide mental health services or training for our teachers and our staff.
Okay.
And so this just gives us the breakdown. And one thing I will say about the breakdown is we do have, it is broad, so we do have flexibility throughout the 5 years to be able to reallocate the funds. If we need more funds in a certain area, we absolutely can do that. We're not limited to sticking to that specific amount. And if we do that, we will of course bring it back to the board for information.
So if we at one point determined that there was a need for maybe more for ethnic studies, that looks like it's right currently maybe the smallest portion, we could reapportion and provide more toward that.
That is correct. And the reason ethnic studies is in there is, as we know, by 24-25, the high school does have to offer one semester. And so we did include that in there. It was part of the requirement of the grant, but we did include that in there because we know that's coming up. And so we want to start planning for that so that we can be prepared for implementation in 24-25.
And could this grant and the funds from it support more than just that specific statutory requirement for a class, but in addition, other inclusion programs?
It could. One of the other bullet points does talk about school climate, which refers to inclusion. And remember, this is all intended to build teacher capacity, continue to expand teacher expertise and professional development so that that can trickle down into the classroom, not only for the teacher's own knowledge to be able to implement a rigorous and informational instructional program for the kids, but to support student learning in those areas.
And it could expand not just with and I didn't actually articulate what I was thinking, but I appreciate what you're saying.
Sure.
That was helpful. In addition to the class, the same themes that are being promoted with the ethnic studies class, if there were other programs that could be created to further those same goals of the ethnic studies class, would this grant and the funds be able to be used to implement programs?
If it was a direction that the district is moving towards, and it was a board priority, the monies of the grant would go for teacher professional development to build teacher expertise so that they are knowledgeable of what they would be implementing. Yes.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then I did forget to mention though, as we were talking about the funds, the $644,463, at the end of the 25-26 school year, if we do not expend all of the funds, those funds do need to be returned to the California Department of Education. So our goal is to really maximize the use so that we can spend every dollar of those funds. And then for our next steps, really looking at how we're going to continue to implement the plan and continue to monitor the plan, looking really where our needs are as a school district, not only through our LCAP, but many of our instructional leadership teams, feedback from our teachers, feedback from current professional development that we are implementing and rolling out, the frequency of our professional development, the relevancy of our professional development, and then engaging in ongoing collaboration and evaluation of professional learning needs. Again, what is our assessment data telling us? What is our state assessments? What are our state assessments telling us? Where are our needs as a district? And we wrote the plan specific, but yet broad, because we know that our needs may change between now and the year 23-24 or even 24-25, but they still all align to those areas that are required by the plan. And then lastly, we are always continuing to look at where we can partner and with who we can partner with to provide valuable professional development for our teachers to build expertise, and then how we can implement that. You know, looking at time, looking at substitutes, looking at how our teachers can be released so that we can provide that professional development, professional training, and professional learning, because we know how critical that is as new initiatives are rolled out, new programs are rolled out, new statutes are introduced. And so really looking at making sure that our teachers are equipped with the knowledge and the tools necessary to effectively roll those out into the classroom.
Question, is there typically with these grants, there's usually some sort of an evaluation component? Is that part of this one? And what is the evaluation plan in terms of both formative and at the end of it? Because if we're going to want to make shifts, do we have an evaluation plan in place so that we know where we want to make substantive shifts?
There is no requirement for the evaluation piece. We did not have to write that into this plan, but of course, with everything we do, we want to make sure that it's relevant. We want to make sure that it's effective. That's why the first bullet on our next step is really monitoring the progress and making sure that it's relevant for our teachers, because we know time is valuable to our teachers. And the time that we have for professional development is also very limited. And so we want to maximize that. And so what we'll be looking at is 1, participation rates. 2, looking at feedback that we'll be getting from any type of professional development that we roll out. But 3, really, our principals are amazing instructional leaders. And when they walk the classrooms, such as we have done over the past couple of weeks, really seeing the evidence of what teachers are learning in the classrooms, how it's being implemented into the instructional day, is really going to be a realistic and more formative gauge of how effective the professional development is. So we're very excited that we're able to obtain these funds and really utilize them for professional learning needs.
Thank you very much for putting this together, especially on a short notice. That's, thank you.
I'm getting kind of used to that. The state, very timely.
So this issue is not a action item, right? Oh,
No, it's just
The next
information
one?
at the next meeting.
next
Yeah,
meeting.
It must be presented at 2 board meetings. The
Uh-huh.
initial one is information and then adopted at the subsequent board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Rector. Well done. Next, number 12 is public comments for the action items. Communication from the audience regarding matters on the action agenda can be made at this time. Dr. Choi.
Okay, we are pausing for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding action items on the agenda. If you would like to make a request, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9 or submit a public comment card. Thirty seconds remaining. If you'd like to make a request, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9 or submit a public comment card. Okay, we have no requests.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. Jason, thank you so much for staying so late with us. Number 13, action item, 13A.
Hi again. Yes, so I come here tonight to ask for your permission to place a plaque inside the San Marino High School weight room as a thank you and a memorial to a student that we all remember we lost about 3 years ago, Matthew Ari. Parents use that as an opportunity to have the community donate funds in his memory to the tune of just over $50,000, $50,000 and some change, which they donated through the foundation in an effort to support the football program in whatever way that the coach then saw fit. Our coach at the time, Justin Mesa, decided to extend that gift to support all athletic programs and redesigned and re-outfitted the entire weight room with all new materials, including free weights, different rigs, bars, etc. It's a much cleaner facility now. It's a much safer facility now, thanks to this, and we've been getting a lot of great use for it. The plaque that you see up there is relatively 3 inches by 9 inches. So if you, it's about like that big. It would go inside the door. If you are familiar with our weight rooms, we have kind of a small weight room, a very large, almost double size, and then another small one. This would be inside the center one, that very large one, right inside the doorway, so that our students would understand where that gift comes from and in whose name it is there for. So I'm here to answer any questions regarding that.
So on the content, what is the number 56?
That was his number he wore as he was playing
Oh,
football. He was a
okay.
4-year football player.
Oh, okay.
If there are no other comments or discussion, may I have a motion? This is an action item.
I make a motion to approve item number
13A.
13A with respect to the donation of $50,000 for the weight room in memory of Matthew Airy.
I second.
Thank you, Mrs. Jack and Mrs. Chang. With that, I'd like to do a roll call vote. Mr. Kalaki,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Jack,
Aye.
Mrs. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, I, and student board member. Thank you so much. The motion has passed for this action item. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. I'd like to invite you guys 2 o'clock tennis tomorrow against Huntington Beach. We're in the semifinals, thanks to our great play on Monday. So come on by before the showcase.
Oh, I have a question, Jason. Do you know what the food trucks are?
Oh, Jane.
She's planning dinner. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if I need to make dinner or not.
There's habaneros, clam burger, and there's another ice cream truck.
Paradise,
I
probably.
think it's paradise.
All right.
Sounds
But
good.
If you have a special request, I can find it.
Both sound good.
We're all eating at the high school tomorrow night.
All right.
Yeah.
Dr. Delatorre,
Thank you.
board
Thank you.
superintendent, any discussion items?
No, none. Thank you.
All right. With that,
I
I,
have one discussion
Okay.
item. On our, in a future board meeting, if we could look into the board superintendent search timeline and how that might look for us for this school year, as we move on with 20 million other things we're juggling. But if we can just start the ball rolling on that, I would request.
thank you. All right, with that, I'd like to adjourn.